Bethany, would you like to talk a little bit about the class and then we'll move forward?
Hi, my name is Bethany Stravato. I am a junior at Slippery Rock University. I'm a dance major and a philanthropy and nonprofit management major. I am a student aide in the office with Alice. And this semester, I'm part of the Empowered to Serve class. And this class has helped to put on this presentation today and another one today for the students. In class, we're learning about our own purpose and our journey and figuring out how to explore those skills in life and our future. So today, we welcome Adam Leipzig. He is an internationally recognized media executive, entrepreneur, educator, and author. He has had a unique career because it has been evenly divided between nonprofit and for-profit organizations. Adam served as a senior executive at Walt Disney Studios, a giant for-profit, as a president of National Geographic Films, a giant nonprofit, and has guided dozens of organizations and companies to craft high-impact media stories as an independent advisor. He is a professionals faculty at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. Along the way, Adam has made 35 films that have disrupted expectations, including March of the Penguins, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Dead Poets Society, and Titus, A Plastic Ocean. One of his most recent documentaries has inspired more than 100 new laws around the world and was invited to the United Nations. We are so happy to have you here today, Adam, and we have all been looking forward to this workshop. So Adam, what is the secret to a great story?
Welcome. I will need to make sure, Adam, I think you're on mute.
How many times have we heard you're on mute in the past year? To answer your fabulous question, Bethany, Alice, everybody, thank you so much for having me here. It's great. But to answer your question, may I tell you a story? And in fact, can I tell you two stories? Here, the first story is, this is about 6 months into the pandemic lockdown, a medium-sized healthcare nonprofit that was a regional healthcare nonprofit was not having good financial times. It was financially really badly hit by all the changes of resources and the changes of customer behavior in the pandemic. The executive director gathered everyone together. This healthcare nonprofit, between full-time and part-time staff, employed between 250 and 275 people. Gathered everybody together in a big Zoom meeting like this. If it had been pre-lockdown, this would have been an all-hands meeting in an auditorium somewhere. This was in a Zoom auditorium. The subject was, we have to do a reorganization if we're going to make it through. And she got up on the screen. Her Zoom jockey spotlighted her, so her face was full frame. And she said, we're going to do this reorganization, and then proceeded to explain how the reorganization was going to make the nonprofit stronger, healthier, better, and more able to fulfill its mission. That presentation did not go over very well. Why? Any ideas why there was a lot of dissatisfaction after she was done? And you can unmute and talk if you feel like it.
Everybody fears change.
Pardon me?
Because everybody fears change.
Everybody fears change. And when you hear your group is going to do a reorg, what's the first thing you think about?
Downsizing
jobs.
Right. And if they downsize, what might happen to you?
Lose my job.
You could lose your job, your benefits, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't go well because she wasn't talking at the level that people needed to hear. Now let me tell you, and these are both true stories. and I've changed just a couple of details, but here's another true story. This is during the pandemic. Um, a community organization had made a really significant transition in its app development to serve its community members better. They developed a custom app, and the amount of memberships had gone up 5x over 6 months. The executive director was thrilled, and the executive director called the community manager and said, "We're about to have a board meeting. Let's do a presentation about what we've done with this app at the board meeting." They got together this board meeting. It's a 1-hour board meeting. You know how boards are. People are very busy. It's hard to schedule them. The community manager called in the person who had coded the app. And the person who had coded the app began to make a technical presentation about how the app had been coded, the coding language that had been used, the technical issues and plugins that they had addressed and managed to resolve. And after about 10 minutes, the community manager got a Zoom nudge from the executive director that says, "Can we move on, please?" And that's a presentation that just did not go well either. Why do you guys think that presentation didn't go well?
Audience was not tech savvy.
The audience wasn't tech savvy. And does the board really care about app plugins? Like, that's not what a board cares about, right? Now, the reason I start with both of those stories is because every time when we are listening to any kind of information, when we're hearing any kind of presentation or any kind of story or storytelling, we are listening to it at multiple levels of understanding at the same time. And this is based on work that a semanticist named S.I. Hayakawa did in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. And he had this he had a revelation about how humans process information. His revelation is that we process information at different levels of abstraction simultaneously. Highly abstract information, like what that executive director did at the beginning in that first story about how the reorganization is going to make make this hospital system better and better and better. That's very highly leveled abstract information. In the second story, the board was being presented with very ground level information, very much in the weeds, very detailed information. And if your audience doesn't care about the level of information that you are explaining, then they can't really listen to you. They throw up walls, they ask you questions, they interrupt, they walk away, they fade out, they do emails, or they just go to a second screen. So how do we solve that problem? The way we solve that problem is by understanding it and understanding what's going on so we can address it. What we're going to do in our time together is I would like to share with you a very powerful tool for organizing your thoughts, because one of the problems that I think that we always have in telling stories, particularly in the not-for-profit universe, is that we get very much down in the weeds and we don't get up to the sky. And sometimes we have to get down in the weeds. Sometimes we have to get down up to the sky. And how do we make the connections between the weeds and the sky? So I'm going to give you a very specific tool that you can use. I'm going to demonstrate it with you. We're going to do a group exercise demonstrating it. And then you're going to work on it yourselves. And we're going to go into a breakout group so you can work on it yourself with probably one partner. And then we'll come back together and share and discuss how we actually turn this into some storytelling. Because the objective that I have today, if this is okay with all of you, is that in 45 or 50 minutes, you leave here with something that is super practical, completely actionable, that will upskill and up-level your storytelling skills. And you're actually able to use that an hour from now, and whatever your next meeting is, okay? Are we game? All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to start by sharing. Okay, I'm doing a screen share. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Somebody thumb up. Okay, great. So now that you can see my screen, I'm going to stop sharing and talk for a moment. We're going to practice a a strategy which is called the ladder of abstraction. Abstraction because of what I've just described, that ideas are either highly abstract or very ground level. And ladder because it's visual and it suggests that you're going up or down rungs as you go. The first thing that we do when we build a ladder of abstraction is that we build a library of content, which are just keywords, just big ideas that we can use that we're going to fill into and place on the rungs of the ladder. And before we even begin to build our library of content, we need to know what it is we're asking for and, crucially, who our audience is. Because an audience of board members is different from an audience of funders, is different from an audience of constituents, is different from an audience of community groups, is different from your staff, is different from your vendors. So we really have to find ways to speak with words that our audience can hear, because not all audiences have the same ears. And it's actually our job to speak with the languages that their ears understand. It's not their ears' job to understand the way we talk. So that said, we're going to do a thought experiment together. Let us pretend that all of us, however many of us we have on screen here, 50 or so, all of us are all working for some fabulous new nonprofit that has just been given a $10 million grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we need to recruit a new senior staff member. Okay, so so we're all just going to think like that. And here, so let's just play. So we are going to try to get a new senior staff member to say yes. So it's going to be a new staff member. And we are asking this person, what are we asking for? To take the job. Okay. And just again, to confirm, you're all seeing my screen as I'm filling this in. I'm going to end up giving you all a fillable chart just like this that you can work with. But right now, we're just going to practice it together. Now, let's describe all the things about this fabulous, fictitious nonprofit that we currently work for. And people, if you could just unmute and throw out some concepts about what are some of the actual attributes of this nonprofit we work for.
Innovative.
Okay. Keep going. If I can type.
Client-centered.
Client-centered, okay. What else?
New ideas.
New ideas? What else?
Trying to solve a complex community problem.
Solving big, complex problems. Okay, what else? Do we have programs?
Focused.
Can I just throw in that we have some programs that work? Is that okay?
Mhm.
And what else about this place? Is it, are there people who work here?
I see
Fun
in the
place to
chat,
work.
Lisa said diverse.
Okay, great. When I'm doing this, I can't see the chat, so it helps me if you call them out. I'm going to say there's great people. How do we work together? Are we in silos? Are we collaborative? Are we teams? How do we work?
We're collaborative.
Okay. Remember, this is our perfect ideal nonprofit that we're working for right now, right? What else? What
We're
other
well
attributes?
paid.
Pardon me?
We're well paid.
Well paid, absolutely. You sure are. We just got that money from the Gates Foundation, so we are definitely well paid. What else?
Volunteer opportunities, community engagement.
Okay.
What about that we're supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? I think that can go a long way.
Okay. I'm going to put big foundation support. Why are we here? What is our ultimate purpose at this mythical nonprofit?
We solve big complex problems.
Okay.
Hunger.
And if we solve big complex
Yeah.
problems, what's going to happen?
Self-sufficiency
Okay, that's self-sufficiency for us. What else?
for our clients.
Okay.
We're gonna get ourselves out of our jobs if we're successful.
Okay, and if we're successful, that means that we've solved big complex problems, that we've actually created big systemic change, I would guess. Can I put that?
Correct.
If we actually could work ourselves out of our jobs, there would be big systemic change. Okay.
Angie also says improved quality of life.
Okay, great. What was the first word about quality of life?
Improve.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So just looking at the at these, and I know that if we spend another 5 minutes, we could come up with 10 more, but let's stop here. We have a good beginning for this nonprofit. Now what we're going to do is scale these, and we're going to put these onto a ladder. And if we look at this ladder, imagine up at the top here, we have 30,000 feet, goes down to 20,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and then down here at ground level are stuff in the weeds. So let's just take a look at something here. Pick one of these attributes on the library of content, and let's pick a place. Anybody just call out a place where you think we should put it between 30,000 feet and ground level. And let's try it out. And I can't see the chat, so please unmute and talk with me. This is free. There are no right or wrong answers. We're just playing
So
in the sandbox
solving
here.
big complex problems should be at 30,000 feet. Like
Okay.
we feed
Solve.
every child in
Okay, feed every
something like
child.
this.
Right, solve big complex problems.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Now, how do we walk down the ladder? We walk down the ladder because we're able to ask ourselves a question. And that question is, how does it work? So we solve big complex problems. How does that work? How do we do that? And I'll bet there's something in here that would help us.
We're
Again?
collaborating.
Okay, I heard somebody say programs. So let's say we have programs that work. Okay, and in order to have programs that work, well, how do we get programs that work? Let's go
We have
down
new
one more.
ideas.
What?
We have new ideas.
Okay, new ideas. And what else?
Collaborative.
Collaborative.
Great people.
Teams, great people. Okay, great. So how do you get really great people?
We pay well.
Okay, pay well. All right, we're going to stop there. We could fill in more. We know that we could fill in more, but we're just going to stop here and see how this works, because we also have a way that we can walk our way up the ladder, and we can walk our way up the ladder by asking this question, which is, why is this important? And here's how it works. We pay people really well. Why is it important to pay them well? Well, so we can get great people who work in collaborative teams on new ideas. And what does that give us? Why do we want collaborative teams that work on new ideas? Because that way we can design programs that work. And what happens when we have programs that work? Why is that so important? We can solve big complex problems that lead to systemic change. Okay, fabulous. Now, one of the other beautiful things about this ladder is that you can work from the top down by asking this question, how does it work? You can work from the bottom up by saying, why is this important? Or you can enter anywhere in the middle of the ladder. For example, let's say that the person you're trying to recruit, because remember here, we're trying to get a new staff member to take a job. Let's say the person really, really cares about excellent collaboration. Let's say that's up at the top of their hierarchy. You can say, hey, we have amazing collaborative teams. If you come here, you're going to have the opportunity to collaborate deeply, meaningfully, respectfully with great people. We have a diverse group of people on our staff who are always having a great time with new ideas. We're able to attract people like you because we pay well. And when we all work together in our collaborations, we're able to design the programs that have been proven to work. And this has allowed us to have a track record of solving big, complex problems. And we hope that one day we're able to make our organization entirely zoom out of existence. Does that make sense? So it works
Yes.
up, down, and sideways. It's a very powerful way to organize your thoughts. And I put something else down here at the bottom of this, which is, if we're going to tell this as a story, who's the main character in the story that you're going to tell? In this case, the person that becomes the main character, because we're talking to someone to try to recruit them to a job, is actually the potential recruit,
Mhm.
right? But I could also imagine that there is a model where you're telling a story about one of your clients, one of your staff members, one of your board members, a community organization with which you collaborate. That is the lens through which you can tell the story. And we'll come to that in a minute. But right now, let's just play with organizing the thoughts of your of the nonprofit that you currently work with. Have any of you ever done an exercise like this before? Okay, it's super fun, and it's actually it's actually great, and it's a very powerful tool, because when you end up creating this ladder, which we're going to go into breakout groups, and let's figure that we're going to go into breakout groups of only 2 people, which will give everybody enough time to build it out and share a little bit. After you've built your ladder, what you end up with is something just like this with just a few keywords on it. Because when you're talking, nobody wants to hear you read. People just want to hear you talk. And if you just have a few keywords, well, you can write it on the back of your hand and you remember those keywords. And not only that, you can remember the relationship between them. What's up high, what's down low, and how you get together so you don't break the train of thought. A Zoom trick for all of us who now must be on Zoom, and we know that when we're on Zoom, if we're looking at the screen, people think we're not looking at them, and we have to do that trick where we look at the eye of the camera, which means we can't really see our people, but people think we're looking at them. But one of the Zoom tricks is that you can take the keywords and draw that little ladder of abstraction on a sticky note, not a big sticky note, one that big, and you take the sticky note and you stick it right under the camera. So you're looking at the sticky note, but people think you're looking at them in the camera, and that works really well. You could organize all your thoughts. And the reason why you only need a keyword is, and I'm just going to call in somebody, Victoria, what organization do you work with?
I work with the Lighthouse Foundation.
And what does that do?
Oh, great
In a
question.
word.
We provide services
To?
to those in poverty, homeless,
Okay,
housing,
great.
food.
So if I said, what are your programs?
Mhm.
You could probably talk to us for 6 hours about your programs. All you need to do is write the word programs, because you remember it. You know it. You are the subject matter expert on your area. You just need to remember programs and where that would go in the tentacle of thought going up or down. That's all you need to do. Okay, here is what's going to happen now. I'm going to make a copy. Okay, let me make sure I have permissions for everybody. Anybody with the link can edit. There we go. And I'm going to put this link is now, all right, so that link of a fillable form I've just put into the chat. First thing you must do, please, is make a copy for yourself. So make a copy, and then that copy is going to be yours forever. You can use it over and over again, and it's just yours. It's going to live inside your drive. And let's take about 15 minutes. Go into breakout groups of 2. Spend the first 5 minutes really building out the library of content. Really building out the library of content for your organization. And start by thinking, maybe you need maybe you're going to ask them, you could just do it to build out the library of content to describe your organization. But if you have something where you were going to have to ask somebody or some group to say yes to something, you could fill in those top boxes, which is, what are you asking for and who are you talking to? So you might be asking for $1,000 from a donor. You could be asking the board to approve a new program. You could be asking your staff to accept a new set of protocols. If there's something like that, then you could do that as well, and that can make it even more specific. But if you don't have something where you have a specific ask that you need to tell a story about soon, just fill it out for your organization. It's going to help you find a way to talk about the organization you work with internally and externally. Does this make sense? And are there any questions before we play in the sandbox together and experiment with this? Are you guys game to try? Okay, great. Did everybody grab that fillable form and make a copy for yourselves, please? Wonderful. Well then, could I please ask our colleagues at Slippery Rock to move us into breakout rooms of 2 people each. And you'll magically be transported there. You'll probably have to accept going into the room. And then we'll all come back together in about 15 minutes. Spend some time first building out your library of content. Don't go right into the ladder. Build the library of content first. It makes it much easier. And to organize the ladder, use those questions. How does it work going down, and why is it important going up? And then we'll look at some of them and see how they work, okay? How was that little experiment for people? Did anybody have enough time to actually start to put your keywords into the ladder? Okay, how did that go? How did it go for you? Did it feel accomplishable? Did it feel mystifying? Was it hard to figure out how to go from one place to the other?
I think it was, for us anyway, it was a slow start, but then once we got things going and got some ideas going, the momentum kicked in, and I think pretty strong.
Great. And one of the tests, one of the reasons that we sort of went into pairs is that it really helps to share your ladder with somebody and talk it up and down to see if the connections work, because you'll feel in your body, oh, I can't really go from that rung to the next rung. It doesn't quite feel right. If somebody filled in their ladder, would anybody be willing to screen share with the group just so we can, workshop a little bit together and practice it together, see where you are? Charlie, would you be willing to?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure if I have the capacity to share. Oh, here we are. I do. Okay, can everyone see that?
Perfect. Yep. Okay. So great. So let's just start with So what you're talking to a donor who has who typically considers support at this time. You have a library of content there that you could build out more. And I love that you just have a keyword success stories, because you're the subject matter expert of success stories. If we said, what are your success stories? You could tell us a bunch of them. You just need to remember that there are success stories as you go. Let's just, can we play with this, and can I just feed you with this and ask you some questions?
Sure.
Okay, great. Hey, let's go back to let's go to the bottom of the ladder. If you could scroll up a little bit, please. Other way. I'm sorry, scroll down. There we go. Okay. All right. So, can you explain what's down at that ground level to us, please?
So because we're introducing ourselves to a new major gift prospect, and typically, we want to build up the relationship, and that could take some time. But because this is the typical time of the year where this donor could consider a major gift, we're a little bit rushed through the process here, and we do want to deliver this solicitation in an appropriate way. But we have that initial introduction. So before we've made this call, there's donor research that has been provided, looking into the historical relationship as well that the donor has with the organization, and being able to draw from your own professional experiences with the donor so that they can get to know you a little bit better as well. So that to us was the ground level, the groundwork there at the beginning.
Okay, and why would it be important to do? Why would it be important to do those things? I'm now trying to take you up one step.
Sure. The importance of doing that is to really open the relationship, develop rapport, and ultimately deliver trust as well. The donor may have trust with the organization, but they may not necessarily have trust with you just yet.
Okay, so you know, just as an example, those items aren't there in your ladder. So there's a little bit of a disjuncture. I feel like what you have here in this ladder is is at the bottom, is about what you're doing with the donor, but the rest of the ladder is about the attributes of your organization. Am I right?
Yes.
That's sort of what it feels like to me. So as an example, let's just say we were able to replace what's down at the ground level with some of the very specifics of your organization right there, because what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the donor, but we're going to have some specifics, and I don't know what those specifics are, but could you give me one so we can experiment with it?
Well, maybe if it is a detail about the donor, maybe they have a 3-year giving history. Would that
Well,
help?
how about it's not so much for the, let's go to your organization itself. We're going to talk to the donor about your organization. What does your organization do?
Well, we're a humanitarian organization, and we deal services at the community level, national level, and international level.
Okay, great. So what if we just put field services there? Just put field services there, just so we can have that. Okay, great. So as an example, you could talk. Let me just do let me model talking up the ladder for a moment with you. That we do field services, and those are important because they are very successful, and we have certain success stories and success metrics that we can talk about. And why is that important? Because the need is extremely urgent. And why is it important to fulfill an urgent need? Because if we do, there will be massive community impact. I'm changing your words a little bit, but I'm pretty much following the ladder that you have described. And we could also walk down the ladder by saying to the donor, we know that you care a lot about having massive community impact. How does that work? Well, the need is immediate, and we have about a 6-month time horizon to get certain things accomplished. And how does that work? Well, there are successful programs that we've been running, and we can amplify them and do them better. And how do those work? Well, there's field services and other kinds of things that we do to service on a local, community and larger level. Now, here's one of the other cool things about this ladder. You might start in this conversation with the donor right there at the 20,000 foot level, which is urgency. The need right now is now. Historically, this donor seems to be making gifts around this time of the year. Right now, your organization has urgent needs right now. And this is a way that your needs and the donor's needs can come together at this exact time. And why are they going to be important? Because that donation is going to have massive community impact, which will benefit the organization and the donor's purpose for doing what they're doing. And how is it going to work? Well, then you would work down about how that donation is going to be deployed. And you go down the ladder to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, just let's unscreen share, if you wouldn't mind. Let's go back to everybody. Was that example helpful to just try to parse it out? And one of the things that I found, Charlie, thank you so much for playing along. And I know this is something that we've all just introduced 25 minutes ago, so we're all just learning it. But one of the reasons it's helpful is that I found is that as we were trying to walk up or down the ladder, specifically, my talking points broke a little bit. I couldn't quite find a fluid way to do it. And that's what I meant. Like you feel in your body, if you can fluidly go up and down, then you have those tentacles of thought really good. And if you can't, then you want to look at it in a different way and see how can I make the rungs of the ladder work better. Is there anybody else that would like to and be willing to screen share, and we could just experiment a little bit more together? We're all friends here. Does anybody actually have a completed ladder?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, great. Gemma, would you please? That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wait, give me a second. Okay, here you go.
Okay.
Me bring a thing up. I worked it out with Ivy and she thinks it goes pretty smoothly.
Okay, great. So you're asking for $50,000 from a local foundation. I see that you've built out a good library of content. So let's go down a little bit more. Keep scrolling down. Let's take a look. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Okay, great. Okay, and Ivy, can I suggest, so can I just ask you to scroll up a little bit so we can see the whole ladder on the screen? And what would, I'm sure that the budget of your organization is more than $50,000. Specifically, what would the $50,000 go towards?
I work at the university, so I'm basically asking for this specific program. So this program will go to supporting, paying for the practitioners for their teaching and coaching, as well as and also the learners doing things like a little budget for their prototype.
Okay, so is the program that you're describing what you have at the 10,000 foot level?
Yes.
Okay, great. Perfect. It's exactly where it wants to be. Could you just, in front of learning spaces, could you just put $50,000 for?
Okay.
Because that's what we need. Okay, great. And then there may be some other things the $50,000 buys, but that's what we need. Okay, great. So I'm going to feed you some questions, and let's just see how it works. I'm going to pretend that I'm the executive director of this foundation that you're asking for $50,000 from. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So Gemma, I understand that you want $50,000 for learning spaces and a place for belonging for diverse students. How is that going to work? How's the money really going to be deployed?
So we will have two parts of the program. One is led by learning, one is led by doing. So the learning part will have experienced practitioners teaching, and the doing part will have the same practitioners coaching.
Okay. Thank you.
And all our teaching and doing are informed by complexity theory, complexity approaches.
I understand. So okay, I understand we want these spaces and spaces for belonging. Why is it important to have those? Now we're going up the ladder.
So you see, our society, we have, even at our local level, we have so many intractable problems, such as the economic transition from more traditional based to a more of a green based economy, and we haven't really been making good progress. And part of the reason is because we don't have that quality of relationship among the change leaders in the region. So I would really like to have that space to develop that relationship and build that capacity for making that change happen.
Okay, fabulous. And so look what you did a great job. And look what you just did. When I asked you why it's important, you went right up to the top of the ladder and talked about this big idea about building capacity to solve intractable problems. And then you went one step down before I even asked and explained how it was going to happen by serving change leaders in a certain way.
Right.
It's a beautiful way to describe what you want to do.
Mm.
How does that feel for you?
It feels great. It's like it started, basically what you did was it started at the middle, kind of tell what it is, and then you went down and then you went up, and it's very helpful in organizing the thoughts. Otherwise, all my thoughts came to me like in a big dump. I don't know where to start and where to go. So very, very helpful.
Right. And you can see also one of the, let's unscreen share for a moment. That's great. Thank you so much for being willing to share your example. One of the things that happens, I don't know about you, but I know that I never get more than 2 minutes into a presentation before someone interrupts me with a question. Does that ever happen to anybody else? Right? And why do they interrupt us? It's because they're thinking at a different level of abstraction than we're talking at the moment. So for example, if Gemma had just started talking about, we have to solve intractable problems and gone on for a couple of minutes about that, immediately someone was going to interrupt and say, hey, what are you talking about? How's that going to work? And then what we realize is that the person isn't really trying to challenge us. They're just thinking at a different place on the ladder. That's okay. No problem. Well, then Gemma would be able to jump right down a couple rungs to the ladder and say, well, we have to create spaces where diverse people are in a safer space to relate, and we can solve this through complexity modalities. And that's important because if we do this and we do this and we do this, then we're actually going to be able to work towards larger societal issues because we're modeling that here in this program, right? And what that allows you to do is if somebody asks you what I call a disruptive question that tries to throw you off track, you're able to understand, oh, they're not really disrupting. Their brain is just at a different place because that's where their brain works. That's where their ears hear. It's okay. That's why we're all different. But you go to that place on the ladder, and then you go right back into the spine of the ladder to go up or down. It could there are also other examples where you could be talking about something very granular and specific, and somebody says, yeah, but what does that have to do with our organization? So now they're asking a question about how does that relate to 30,000 feet? And you're able to say, well, that relates to our organization because our job is to solve these problems in our community and solve them well. And how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we do that? Well, with this program, which you were just asking me about. Or sometimes you're talking about a big idea, and then the finance person says, okay, yeah, but how much is that going to cost? Well, that's all the way down to the bottom question. And it's the finance person's job to ask those questions. That's why we have a finance person, to keep us from going bankrupt. And they need to know that. Their job depends on that. And they want to know that you've thought that through. But they're not really challenging the idea. They just want to know how it relates to the part of the ladder that they have responsibility for. I'm just curious to know how that feels, how that lands with you. Thoughts, questions, discussion.
I'm curious, Adam, when you're doing this and maybe preparing to work. Sorry, I should tell you it's Sonia. I don't have video on right now.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
When you're preparing to maybe work with a colleague and you're preparing for that meeting, I think I've seen, especially when I've done institutional fundraising for universities, that especially academics get stuck on the rung of the ladder that they associate with more. How do you help them or even yourself feel more comfortable in that fluidity?
Well, this is the reason that I suggest that when we practice this, we practice it with a partner. And after you've built out your ladder and then thought about how you want to tell the story, and we can talk about storytelling in a little bit also, you want to practice, and you always want to practice because the first time we make a presentation is generally terrible, and we're very poor judges ourselves of how well it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask your partner to listen with the ears of the audience you'll be presenting to. Generally, people are pretty good at figuring out how to listen to with those ears if you are specific about who the audience is. And then they can give you some feedback and say, well, you know, the community college board isn't really going to care about what you're talking about, but they're going to care about this. Even if you've never met the community college board, you kind of know what a community college board does and cares about. So you could, your pretend audience listening with those ears would be able to really help you shape the level of details. And a lot of storytelling is having the exact right level of details. Sometimes it's a lot of detail in one area and almost no detail in another area, depending on what the audience needs. I also think that more and more we want less presentation and more conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So if the presentation is just to set the table and it lasts 2 or 3 minutes, which is a perfect amount of time to set the table, and then you're able to get into a conversation with your interlocutor, that's where you can really listen yourself to what matters to that person or to that committee and begin to dive deep. And obviously, the bigger your ask, the more practice and expertise you need to have. If you're asking for $25 to bring donuts on Friday, you don't have to do too much research about it. But if you're asking for $250,000 to build out a program, you better have a spreadsheet and a plan and a timeline and a ton of details because it's a big ask. And obviously you need to scale the level of your own preparation to the scale of your ask.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. What else?
Adam, this is Gemma.
Hi, Gemma.
Hey, my question is which rung on the ladder do you begin? Do you start? Does it depend on the audience? Do you have advice on that kind of groups of audience and where to start?
Okay, I love that question because the ladder is the way that you organize your thoughts, and you can present from the ladder, but sometimes the ladder is not how you tell the story at all. Sometimes you just tell a story, and the story will lead you into something else. So, for example, when Bethany kicked it over to me a little while ago, I told you a couple of stories. I didn't tell you like the organization of how we think about thought. I told you a couple of stories to get you into it. And there were stories that have people that are personified, that are probably relatable circumstances for you. I went back through my former clients and situations that I've personally seen to try to come up with some stories that would make sense in your context. So you had some handle on the potential of what an all hands meeting would be or what a board meeting would be. And sometimes you just want to tell a story. And that's why at the bottom of the form that I shared with you, there's one more question, which is, who's the main character of the story you're going to tell? Because often it's great to begin with a story, and each story has a main character. When you're making a presentation, actually, there's always 2 main characters because one main character is always you, because they're going to say yes or no to you. We want them to say yes to you. And that means you're the main character, which means you have to be likable, open, relatable, conversational, expert, relaxed, prepared. The way we show respect for our audience is that we come prepared to every encounter with them. And the reason people ask us questions when we're making presentations, in my observation of it, is that they want to see how well we can work together, particularly if you haven't presented to them before. So the questions aren't really meant to challenge you, throw you off your game, knock you back on your heels, belittle you, deprecate you. Even though often people react defensively, and that's exactly the wrong way to react if we want to have a relationship. Generally, those questions are about, gee, can I work with this person? If I say yes, will this person have my back? Will they do a great job? Will they be transparent? Will they be a great communicator? Will they come and let me know if there are problems so I don't find out from a third party? Will they come every 90 days and tell me how it's going? Because I get 500 emails a day. I got too many things I got to worry about. So can I just trust you that you're going to be a great partner with me? And generally, that's what those so-called disruptive questions are about. It's about establishing, can we have a great relationship? If I or the committee that I represent says yes to whatever your request is. But now, Gemma, let me get back to your question about how you tell the story, about how you make the presentation. And this is very, very context dependent. If you're in a group or a department that is super data centric and just wants to hear about the facts, you probably just want to talk about the facts. And if you start telling a personal story, they're going to fade out and they're not going to listen to you. On the other hand, if you're trying to influence people at a more emotional level, let's be honest, all decisions are really made emotionally first. And then retroactively, we figure out why the facts support our decision making. But if you want to influence people at an emotional level, it may be really good to start with a specific story, a very specific story. For example, Charlie, if you were talking to a donor and you know what this donor cares about, you might start with a story of a group that one of your programs helped and made a positive difference, and tell the story about, in 6 months, we had the following outcomes. This program was incredibly successful. This is what it did. Tell that story. And then say, okay, and the reason we're talking today is that with your participation, we could amplify that tenfold. Let me take you into the details. And then you've hooked them with that story. Gemma, you might start with a story of a particular individual who was not able to be working at their full capacity, or felt excluded, or felt invisible, and how that didn't work and that has to change. And then how, by creating the programs and the spaces that you're talking about, that could change. So you might choose to personify it in a very concrete way. And again, like, not made up, like real, concrete. So if we asked you about that person, you might choose to disguise their identity because you don't want to violate confidences, but there's enough real concrete details that we know that this is real, that we're not just making things up, because our authenticity is crucial when we make a presentation. I think generally we can smell it. Even through Zoom, we can smell it if people are being inauthentic. What else? What else should we talk about? And I also know that not all of you know each other or have known each other before. So this is also an opportunity for you to connect with other people on the Zoom screen, if you would like to do that.
Question, Adam. So if your program, let's say, needs $1 million to make the big impact that you need, but you're talking to a donor that the maximum capacity is $25,000 to give, how do you make them feel on the ladder? Where do you put on the ladder that they don't feel just like a drop in the bucket, that they really feel that they're going to make an impact? Or where do you put this on the ladder? What kind of discussion do you think we should have? So,
right. Well, I would still put their 25K right on the 10,000 foot rung. And I would explain to them what that $25,000 will do. And that's how it's going to work. And then why is their $25,000 important? Well, because it's a coalition of the willing and it takes a village. And your $25,000 validates our program, not just because of the $25,000, but because of who you are and the fact that you put your $25,000 there. And it's going to help to trigger more $25,000 and $50,000 and $100,000. And we're going to build this brick by brick until we get $1 million. And that is going to create the full program, which is going to make large societal change. I just walked all the way up to the top.
Thank you so much. It's really
You're
helpful.
welcome.
Thank you.
Go get $1 million.
Do you want to be the first one to help me out? Just teasing.
I make documentary movies. They don't pay, but they do have social impact.
I was just teasing, of course.
So one of the things I like about this is that the better informed your ladder is, you don't trip going up or down.
That's right.
So the burden, I mean, communication is whenever the person I'm speaking with understands the message that I'm trying to send, right? And in the way that I meant to send it and doesn't get lost in all the static. And so if I'm very aware of my ladder, I can sense where is the person on my ladder. And instead of the expectation being for that person to get where I want them to be, I can move them and guide them to where I want them to be. And it becomes a relaxing experience for them, as well as a relaxing experience for me.
Yeah, I love that word, relaxing. So we take the tension out of it for you and for the person or the group you're talking to. So there's no cognitive dissonance. There's no there's no issue in connecting the dots. And it does become our burden as the people making the request or making the presentation to have that flexibility. Like sometimes we wish that the audience had the flexibility to just come to meet us where we are. Alas, it's our job to meet them where they are. It's always our job to meet them where they are. What else should we talk about, team?
We have about 12 minutes left, so what would you like?
Jennifer, what do you think?
I think something that's sticking in my brain that's impactful from what you said was the questions that I can interpret as disruptors and get flustered with, reframing that in my head and looking at the ladder and where the audience is and restructuring what story I'm telling. And I think that's going to be very powerful going forward in my storytelling and conversations with individuals and presentations. So I appreciate you pointing that out to me.
Okay, you're welcome. Sherry, what do you think?
I like the perspective that you gave to us of to remember if the questions aren't on, someone's interrupting the flow of your pitch or your presentation, that it's because of where they like to process, and I know I'm taking that with me because that'll help to reframe. Because of course we always shift gears, okay, and like answer that. But I think it is a more positive way to look at, okay, they're just processing at another level, and it's helpful to see, what can I say that will be more compelling if they really care about that big picture or they really care about the implementation.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's true in our personal lives and our interpersonal relationships also, right?
Absolutely.
Right. We're in relationship, and one person says this, and the other person says, "Oh, but then we won't have time for dinner," and we're just like thinking of two totally different levels of what's happening today.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I thought about those examples as you were talking too, about when you're talking, and then someone asks you something, you're like, that's not. you know, your family, your spouse or whatever, you're like, that's not even where we are right now. What do we-" But it's, yeah, to pause and say, but this is where they're concerned, or this is where they're processing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think somebody was about to speak before Sherry did, but I couldn't tell who.
I think it was Sonia.
It is me. And again, I'm going to apologize for not having video.
No problem. Hi,
But I
Sonia.
wanted to, hello. I wanted to say that I really like the breakout session. And Chris, I hope you don't mind me sharing this since you were my partner. But I work for a large international organization, and Chris works for a small not-for-profit that he has started and been able to grow over the last 15 years, Chris, more or less. And I think for me, what was really interesting when we were working through the ladder is that even though we had such vastly different experience, coaching each other on the ladder was really helpful. Like Chris asked some really amazing questions. I was trying to figure out how to recruit new volunteers and working my way through what am I asking them for if I want them to be a lead solicitor and help the organization network more and have more donors. And so I think it's really valuable to look outside your organization to colleagues that can help you work through that process that maybe don't have the institutional bias. And Adam, you've been doing that as you've been asking questions, but I was really appreciative to have that one-on-one time as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. We do get inside our own bubble, our own nomenclature, our own acronyms. Chris, I'm curious, what was it? What made you such a good coach for Sonia? What was your process in receiving and interacting with her as you were doing the ladder together?
I was truly just trying to understand what it was that that I could grab hold of for my understanding of what she was moving through.
Mm-hmm.
Just asking questions.
Yeah. The process of having somebody else to bounce things off of is, you know, I think it's actually as much of a skill to coach as it is to present. And I think that you need them both. That good presenters always need good coaches. And I don't mean a professional coach. I just mean someone like Chris or Sonia or anybody else in the room and say, hey, can I practice this with you? Does this track? Does this make sense? Can I run these ideas by you? When I have to pitch a movie, and you know, as I mentioned, in the past decade, mainly I have always made documentaries in the past decade, and almost all of them have been funded by nonprofit organizations, or you know, in large or small part. There's always been a significant nonprofit component to it. And some of them have been pretty large-scale nonprofits who have been able to come in with 6 or 7 figures to support a significant documentary. And it's been, by the way, for them, it's been great because it has told their story well. And I think, you know, as Bethany mentioned in introducing me, this film that we made 4 years ago called A Plastic Ocean, which was supported largely by 3 large nonprofits, has changed 100 laws around the world. And from, you know, their ROI was to make societal change, the systemic change. They've had huge systemic change off of that. So it was a very good investment and very mission centric for them. But if I go into present something like this, where I'm going to an entity and asking for large amounts of money, I've practiced it 100 times, and I am not kidding. I'm not being hyperbolic. I've practiced it 100 times. I've practiced it. I practice it with strangers. I practice it with friends. I practice it with my wife. I practice it with my kids. I let people poke holes in it, ask me questions. I watch when they lean forward. I watch when they lean back and start to check their email. So I feel really attuned to what's going to work, what words land, what confuses people, what details feel concrete, what details are too much. So I walk in and I feel really prepared. And then I have this whole hard drive of information lodged in my brain of a lot of details. So if somebody says, well, why are you spending $50,000 on publicity? I can say, well, let me break it down for you. Here's how it goes. And if I'm asking for big money, it is my job to be the master of those facts. And that way, the entity that I'm working with knows that they can trust me, that I'm going to take excellent care of their money as if it were my own. It'll be well spent. We can have transparent conversations. They'll always know what's going on because I'm showing up at the very instance, at the beginning, as a clear, transparent collaborator with them, which is kind of what we all want, right? We want to work with good people. I want to work with good people. Anything else that we should talk about or anything else? Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
You'd mentioned before, and I know we only have 3 minutes left, but you'd mentioned something about lens from which to tell the story. How do you choose what lens?
Think about who the audience is and what they are most going to relate to. And to give you an analogy for that, because to give you an analogy for that, as you know, I'm in the I spend a lot of time in the entertainment space. If we make a movie, we have we might cut 40 different trailers or commercials for it, and you'll see you'll see a different commercial for it that might play at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a daytime TV talk show, and a very different commercial that plays at 9 p.m. at night on some kind of crime drama. Same movie, story told differently. Or you could play this game with if you guys have Netflix. Netflix is, they're very data centric. They know exactly who you are. If I sign up, when I sign on to Netflix, but they show you these previews, and then there's like this single image of the show and the title of the show. So when I sign on for certain shows, the single image is the actors, and it's the white actors in that movie. My wife is black. When she signs on, it shows her the black actors. And that's because they're completely data driven, and they're so specifically attuned to who the audience is. And so by analogy, that's my answer for you. It's like, think about who your audience is, what's going to resonate with them. I find the Netflix thing kind of creepy, but it's a daily household experience that we have.
Thank you.
So Bethany, would you like to close us out here?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Adam, for coming today and doing this wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And thank you to all of our guests that came today as well.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It was great to meet everybody and to have some conversation today.
And for any kind of follow-up, if folks are interested, we have recorded this, and the possibility, once we get it ready for distribution, we'll put it up on the Institute's website, and you're welcome to take a look at it then. And certainly, Adam, if people are interested in getting in touch with you, is that a possibility?
Yeah, it is. You're welcome to. In fact, my email is on the bottom of that Google Doc that I shared with you.
Great.
And so thank you all. And thanks to Slippery Rock. And I'll see you all shortly again.